So, good evening and welcome to the Brass Bands England Facebook Live. I'm joined this evening by Matt Kingston from Big Shiny Brass. Big Shiny Brass was founded in 2009 as an online outlet for Matt's growing output of arrangements. And his career as an arranger has seen Matt produce over 500 published arrangements, mainly for small brass ensembles and beginners. His music has been performed on 6 continents in venues ranging from cathedrals to rugby stadiums, as well as appearing on numerous CDs, TV broadcasts, and radio broadcasts. So, Matt, welcome. I'm delighted that you've joined us. I've known your music as a brass band player and a brass band conductor for a long time, and I have to say I haven't had a bad one yet. So thank you for that.
Keep looking. There's bound to be a bad one in there somewhere.
That wasn't a challenge. So can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your sort of playing career is? What do you play? And then how did you go from being a player to being an arranger, and how did that work?
I'm going to have to be really honest here. My playing career has nosedived in the last decade. I think in the last 10 years, I've played the last post twice, and that's it. Prior to that, I grew up playing the trumpet from the age of 6 or 7 in Gloucestershire, and just loved playing in Cheltenham Youth Brass, going up through the ranks, and then joining the Gloucestershire Police Band, which was great fun. A non-competing band, very much focusing on the sociable side of playing, and the tours, and but also the civic functions. Lots of nice venues like Gloucester Cathedral, playing there. And then I moved to Dorset. When was that? 2007. And I think I missed my band, but I couldn't find a new band to join, so I stopped. I stopped playing. I took up singing instead. So I haven't played brass for about a decade now.
Oh, that's really sad. Yeah, but I completely understand when you move. I've moved around the country quite a lot, and you want to replicate the band that you've just left sometimes, don't you? And that can be hard.
I fell into singing in a choir instead, and I got all my social kicks from that, and love the music making that way. And I miss the camaraderie of the brass band, but not the band.
It's a different camaraderie in a band than it is in a choir, isn't it? Because I've sung for a long time as well,
I think it's more tribal in a choir. It's always everyone blaming the altos or blaming the tenors. There's less.
That's because it's always their fault.
Well, obviously. I think in the brass band, really, is everybody putting together and everybody all on the same team, really.
Yeah, I think you're right. So then the move then into arranging, was that something that you've been doing for while you were still playing up in Gloucestershire, or was that a new thing?
Yeah, I had a job briefly. I was working for a composer in the Czech Republic, sort of doing his transcribing his music, things like that, whilst I was still playing with the band. And the band said, "Well, why didn't you write something for us?" And I came home and I did a couple of arrangements and took them in, and they were generous with me. There were a lot of mistakes in there. I think the horns were playing in 4 or 5 sharps. And you soon learned how to keep the brass players happy.
Yeah.
And really, it just grew from there. Just I got bitten by the bug. I'm inherently quite lazy when I'm writing. So started writing brass band pieces, which are how many parts it is, and then thought, hang on, if I was only writing a quartet or a quintet, that would be so much easier. Really got into small scale arranging quite early on, and just loved it. Loved writing for 5 parts.
And the sort of junior side of it, so the little shiny brass and the junior band arrangements, was that on somebody's suggestion, or had you been involved in any way in sort of training bands, things like that?
Well, when I launched Big Shiny Brass, I was really seeing it as a brass band publisher, and then went to my first trade show. Went to Western Supermare to the summer contest there, set up a trade stand with all these brass band arrangements, and everybody came up to me and said, "Have you got any junior band music? What can we have for our junior band? What have you got for beginners?" I said, well, nothing, but give me a month or 2.
Right.
And again, just really loved writing for that small scale, and having a set of parameters to work with. Knowing what the range of the instruments needs to be, the keys you can work in. Having those sort of parameters to work with really let the music just come quite naturally.
So it was kind of popular demand. People were saying, and was that because they couldn't find suitable arrangements or had liked your previous arrangements and wanted the same kind of thing for their junior bands?
I think what a lot of it was, when you have your brass band arrangement, you have your set layout of instruments.
Yeah.
Whereas the junior bands, so many junior bands were, 27 cornets and a trombone.
Yeah.
They were unbalanced. They were struggling to find an arrangement that suited their band. And I thought, well, if I just have flexible parts, it'll make everybody happy. You can play this on a horn or a trumpet. You can play it on a trombone. Have all those different transpositions. Have the variety of parts that you can pick from. And as long as you've got those 3 or 4 main parts covered, you'll be all right.
Yeah. And is that fairly unusual then? Or certainly was it fairly unusual before you broke the mold of that?
I think it must have been. I could be wrong, but I think there are a lot of sort of off-the-shelf arrangements that didn't necessarily suit a lot of bands that are out there. And also the other thing, Paul, I always wanted to include sort of colour on the scores and things like that, little graphics on the scores.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of junior band music and it looks so boring, so traditional. And I wanted to do something just a bit more vibrant and fun. And I think the bands really, really took to that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's something about junior band music, whilst not being childish, has to be kind of slightly child friendly. Otherwise, there is a fear. I mean, it's like any of us when you open a score of, an orchestral score or whatever, and it's all fancy Germanic script, and it just looks a lot harder.
Exactly. I mean, my wife came home one day and found me sitting surrounded by crayons and stencils and colouring on. What on earth are you doing? You're supposed to be working.
I'm working. And the catalogue then, Matt, is huge now. It's really getting very big, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think that the first published arrangements I had were back in 2000 and I think it's 2005, the first brass quintet arrangements.
Right.
And I really got into that because I didn't want to do a proper job. I'd been working for an insurance company for a few months and thought, I don't want to spend my life doing this. What can I do that's musical? Lets me sit around at home being creative all day. And makes me a bit of money. I spotted a guy on eBay who was selling brass quintet arrangements on a CD-ROM. And I thought, hey, I could do that.
Right.
You buy a CD-ROM, stick it in your computer, print it off. So I sat down and I did an arrangement of, I think it was a William Boyce trumpet tune or something like that. And the next day I sold it for 99p. And I thought, great, if I within a month I've got 30 of those, that's 30 quid a day, and so on. It built up, and within a year I had probably 100, 150 quintet arrangements. And then thought, well, how can I translate this to brass bands? What can I do? And it was just that sort of time that broadband was taking off and home print becoming so cheap. So I thought, let's stop selling printed music. Let's let people download a PDF, print it themselves. So I think it was 2012 I went completely digital, stopped doing the printed music altogether.
Right.
And automated the whole sales process. So I could really just focus on writing and arranging and not going to the post office, not printing stuff out.
Yeah.
It just, everything fell into place, really.
And people are used to that idea now, aren't they? They're very much used to. In fact, I know, when I buy music and I've got to wait 2 weeks for it to come from the publisher, I get a little bit antsy about that. Because, well, why don't you just send me a PDF?
Exactly. I often just get great joy from writing arrangement one morning, and the next day people are playing it.
Yeah, there's an immediacy, isn't there? Yeah.
How the world has changed.
And the music that you arrange, then, I've played and I've conducted quite a lot of it, and the musical range of it is huge. So, like you say, from Boyce up to modern day pop songs.
Yeah.
Is that stuff? So when you started doing it, was it things that people said I would really like an arrangement of, or was it things that you'd played, or just personal favourites?
When I started out, the first 50 or so arrangements were me finding my way as an arranger. And I thought the best way to do that is to look at the great masters, look at Bach or whatever, and take one of his fugues or a prelude and convert that for brass players. So a lot of it was more a transcription process rather than arranging. It was taking the original parts and translating them, if you will. So that was how I started, really, in the classics. And then I really just expanded to whatever I could find that I thought would work with brass, whether it was a jazz piece, whether it was a traditional piece, I could put my own spin on. The golden rule I've gone with, because I don't want to spend hours doing admin and sending off forms and so on, is to only do music that's out of copyright. So
Oh, really?
I get a lot of requests for Star Wars and things like that and Harry Potter,
Yeah.
but the amount of admin I think I have to do to go alongside that doesn't really suit me.
So
It doesn't suit my lifestyle. I don't want to be doing admin.
that's why you do what you do, isn't it?
Statements to publishers and so on. I want to just be doing my own music. And
now that really surprises me, because if somebody had put some money on it with me, I would have said that you did arrangements of contemporary songs and things as well, but you don't.
Well, it's so much music that we think of as contemporary isn't.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I've just done that arrangement for Brass Band England of the Wellerman, which is suddenly at #1 in the charts and is 200, 300 years old. It's an 18th century song from New Zealand. There are piano pieces from the Baroque that are jazzed up as pop songs in the 70s.
Sure.
There's so much music that we think of as being modern, but actually has its roots much older.
Yeah, so contextually it's modernized, but actually originally it's a lot older. I was going to ask you about the Wellerman. I had a wonderful interview with the guy who has gone to the top of the charts, because he's a Scotsman and he's a very ordinary bloke who is now sort of thrust into the world's eye. The interviewer said to him, "No, I don't know anything about sea shanties. Are there loads of them?" And he said in his wonderful Lanarkshire accent, "Yeah, there's. I've been looking. I mean, I've come across at least 20." And he's saying, "You've got a few more pages to turn, my friend."
Well, I did a set of like pirate songs and sea shanties a couple of years ago, pieces of 8, and I spent hours, days researching them all, trying to narrow it down to. I chose 10 in the end, but actually trying to get it down to that list of 10.
Yeah.
Oh, so much fun listening to sea shanties. Can't say it. Listening to sea shanties for days on end.
Yeah, they're great fun. So, and as a singer as well, they're great to perform. So you've done this brilliant arrangement for us for our first Brass Foundations project this week. So we're very excited about that. We're very excited about actually getting together as a team in the same room, which is something we haven't been able to do since January. So I only know my colleagues from kind of there up.
Their living rooms intimately, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're really looking forward to that. So the Wellerman is a fairly simple tune, as these shanties and folk songs tend to be. So what's your process when you take a tune like that? Is it do you write the melody and chords and then fill it out, or do you start with a bass line, or how does it work?
What I think I normally do, I ought to know what my formula is, because I've been doing it for so long, but I don't even think about what the formula is. I think I probably take the tune and first of all find a comfortable key where the trumpets will play in that key, the horns can play in that key, something that fits in a sensible range for all the instruments, because then you've got a lot of opportunities throughout the arrangement to pass the tune around the band. Yeah. So I'll first of all sort out that key, and then really just focus to begin with on the principal players. So for the first verse, for instance, work out what the first cornets are doing, what the first horns are doing, what the first trombone is doing, what the bass is doing, and then really flesh out the harmony from there for that first verse. And then I suppose repeat, do a second verse, but vary it around, give the tune to somebody else, change the color, change the texture, change the dynamics, just create a bit of variety. And give everybody a chance to have some fun. Don't just have the basses umpiring all the way through and the horns on the offbeat. Give everybody a chance to play a bit of a melody or a counter melody and have that little moment, right?
Yeah, I do think that's one of the kind of trademarks of your arrangements, is that nobody gets bored. As I speak as a bass player, I like not just playing beats every now and again.
It's nice to have your little moment. There's a lovely video on YouTube I often watch with my son, he's 7 now, of Respighi's Pines of Rome, and it's a live performance, and you can see the band build it. Orchestral performance, but you see more and more players coming in, And there's one moment where it's just getting to the climax, and this sort of contra tuba player takes up his instrument. I remember the first time we watched that, my son went, "Whoa!" I hadn't played his fortissimo long note yet, but he could just see it, sense that something was coming. And it's always nice to have those moments to look forward to as a player. You know that when it gets to letter F, I've got my little moment that I'm going to enjoy.
Until you're sitting in the first rehearsal and you go, "Oh, there. Oh, right, okay." Not the
moment the conductor says, "Right, stop, back to letter A."
I love the fact that there's still that wow factor when children see something, they know something is about to happen, and that real feeling of anticipation builds.
Yeah, there's nothing like discovering those moments for the first time. The first time you hear a piece of music and you can sense something coming, and it gets to that point where it does finally come. You think, yes,
brilliant. Yeah,
it's great for the composer to actually sometimes work towards those moments. You can feel there's a good moment around the corner, and it's working out how to get there. What's the journey you're going to take to get to that climax? It's exciting journey.
That's really interesting. So you would potentially spin an arrangement out a little bit to increase that sense of anticipation, or to make that moment a bit more special?
I think so. You can sometimes, by taking a slightly more circuitous route to somewhere. If you feel there's a big chorus coming up, put in a smaller chorus first. Build it up slowly rather than go straight to the money. Yeah,
don't give away all your ideas too soon.
Yeah, you've got 2 pages to fill. Don't peek at the top of page 2. Wait till.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, and going back to your catalogue then. So now that you've been doing it for as long as you've been doing it, and bands and ensembles are used to playing your music, do you get many suggestions or commissions, or people saying, "All we need is kind of 8 bars of this for a wedding that we're playing at, and the church is only 10 feet long"? And
surprisingly few, actually. No, I tend to come up with ideas, arrange it myself, and I think I've got a sort of finger on the pulse of what people want by now. Yes, you do occasionally get an email saying, "Oh, I've been asked to play this at a wedding tomorrow. Can you help me?" But no, generally I sort of pick and choose what I want to arrange, and hope there's a market for it.
And is there anything that this is maybe an unfair question, but is there anything that you've done that has gone to market and just kind of sat on the digital shelf?
Yeah. Yes. Well, I've actually removed things from digital shelves. Yeah, there are things I look back a few months later and think, actually, I'm really not very happy with that. Even if it is going well commercially, I might think it's not good enough. It's not me. It's not what I want to do. So I've no qualms in putting a plug on something digitally, and hopefully not many people have downloaded it.
I suppose that's one of the benefits of digital, isn't it? Because if you just take it off your website, simply, then that's an awful lot easier than going back to the publishers and finding out how many copies it's printed, and presumably it's an awful lot cheaper.
It's much cheaper.
Yeah. And do you go back at all then to things that you've done? Some of the first things that you did, when you maybe hear them being played, and you think, "Oh, I could tweak that. I could make that a little bit more interesting," or "I didn't like the way it transitioned there."
You'd be surprised how little of my music I actually hear performed, Paul.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I don't get out and about very much. I'm trapped down here in the depths of rural Dorset, but there's not a huge band scene. I used to get out quite a bit and do a lot of contests. Go along with Kingston and do some contests and meet people who are playing my music. And I don't get out very much to hear my music. I see YouTube clips of it, and yeah, there are probably ways I can improve the arrangement. But if I see a band enjoying themselves,
if it ain't broke,
why change it?
Yeah. No, that's a good philosophy. That
I think that in the whole catalogue, the thing where I really did go back and tweak it a few times is the book for all occasions, which has it's ended up as probably my biggest seller because of its flexibility. It's arranged for quartet that expands right up to a full band. But the very first version of that I did was scored just for brass band. So I deconstructed it. I made it much more friendly in terms of the keys, the ranges, the flexibility of it. I think I'm on version 4 now.
Right.
Just little tweaks I made over the years. I think that's it now. We'll settle with version 4. I'm happy with it.
I think I've got at least 2 versions of that. I've got a full band version, I've got a quintet version. So I'll maybe email you and find out whether I've got the 2.4 version.
The very first set I did was printed on A5 March cards, which I then myself super glued the spines of it together with a bit of rubber and stuff. Seems a long time ago now, but I don't miss those days. I much prefer just tap, upload a PDF. So
there it is. Yeah, it saves you a fortune on glue as well.
Absolutely.
And is there a piece then that you've been kind of keep going back to for years, or that's maybe still to see the light of day, or is there a piece that you think one day when I've got time and inspiration, that's the piece that I'm going to go for?
I'm wearing my brass hat. No, there isn't. But I sort of have a side career as a choral composer.
All right. Okay.
Which is original music, not arrangements. I write a lot of choral music now, and I did a requiem. I wrote a requiem about 6 years ago for choir and solo cello. Wow. Which I think, had you asked me that question 10 years ago, my answer would have been, I've sort of got this thing bubbling away. Right. And it took me years to write it. I had little snippets over the years that I sort of pieced together. Mm-hmm. And then when I became a father, I suddenly found that children sleep a lot. I'd taken a bit of time off arranging. I said, I'm going to take 3 or 4 months off from work. What can I do? And my son would just sleep for 6 hours a day, and I'd sit down at the piano and just play along and see what happened. And I really started during that time to piece together this choral work. Right. So I think that was the piece that I'd always said, I really hope one day I can create something that sees the light of day.
And have you published that? Is that complete?
I self-published it. We did a big crowdfunding campaign to get it recorded professionally. Brilliant. And I was supposed to be last year, supposed to be taking it on tour, doing choral workshops around the country. I only managed 1 in February, and then that was it. But all about to kick up. So this autumn, I've got 8 choral workshops in cathedrals and abbeys around the country. So
that's great. That's a really interesting. I was going to say sideline. I don't mean that. I mean parallel line, I suppose. And I'd love to hear that, because I was a choir boy, believe it or not. And
I use a pen name for that. My mother, her father, and her grandfather were both choral composers.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
I use the Coleridge name, her family name. So Matthew, if you Google Matthew Coleridge, there's a YouTube performance of it on there. There's
excellent.
And so on. So yeah, go and have a listen.
I will do that. And Coleridge isn't a bad name to have in the composing world, is it? Really?
It's pretty good. Well, the whole artistic side of the Coleridge family is renowned. So yeah.
Is that your family? Have we got another hour's interview in this?
My mother's family. So Samuel Taylor Coleridge is a distant relative. Yeah.
I think we found another interview, but for another day. Matt, thank you so much. We're fast running out of time. I really appreciate your time. And it's great just to, as a player and as a conductor, it's just really interesting to have an insight into the processes that go on before the dots hit the paper for us to see. So thank you so much for that. And thank you as well for the Wellerman, which I'm really looking forward to working on this week with young players from around the country.
Have fun with it.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. So we are at Brass Bands England. No, we're not. We're at Brass Bands Eng on Twitter. So do follow us on Twitter. We're at Brass Bands England on Instagram. And if you remember to like us on our Brass Bands England Facebook page, you'll get notifications of when we go live with events just like this. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you will see all sorts of things. So once again, Matt Kingston, thank you very, very much. Good luck with all your endeavours. And I really hope to see the choral work as well as some more brass band work really very soon. Cheers, Matt.
Nice to talk to you.